But that got me thinking whether there were bikes that you would consider buying this year, perhaps a little bit more in budget. So I tasked us both before we started the podcast with thinking of 3 retro bikes on the market in 2023 that we'd either recommend or like to take home and have in a sort of retro dream garage. Do you want to go first or me?
Yeah, no, I'll go first. I think you can probably guess. I mean, you know at least one of mine. I'd put money on it now.
I already do.
So I'll hopefully surprise you a bit more with the first 2. And my first pick didn't even take me long to think of these 3 was the BMW R9T, because I borrowed it for an extended period last year. And I've always liked it, but when I say the Norton isn't a bike you buy that Logic buys, that your head buys, the R9T absolutely is. And then the longer you live with it, then you start to sort of see the character and the worth in it. And it's also quite a good performer. I think people do know that it is, it can perform really highly and it can keep up with the likes of a street triple. I've been out with my dad when he's on a street triple, and I owned one. And I took it on the same sorts of roads, and I can say I wouldn't have been any faster on that street triple because it has, relatively high spec brakes. It has high spec suspension and stuff like that. And of those choices, probably the Scrambler, but only because it's a bit more of an upright position. It just gives you a bit more visibility and leverage over the bike.
It is a brilliant bike. It has always surprised me as well, sort of how good the riding experience and handling is. And again, it's another kind of unusual bike where if you get the top spec one, it has like good componentry, lively chassis, and then an unusual engine, that doesn't deliver power in a way that you necessarily think of if you're riding something that can hustle a bit. You might be thinking of like V-twin or 270 parallel twin or an inline 4 or something like that in a naked bike. But that Boxer twin, it shifts and it's a weird power delivery. It's very like super linear. It's got its own sound and feel, but it's so fun.
What's odd about it is how linear it is. That's one of the things that really surprised me about the R9T. Is I was expecting it to be a big sledgehammer V-twin. Sorry, not V-twin. Yeah. Flat twin.
Yes.
But, have the same sort of power delivery as the likes of a V-twin. But it really didn't. It is, it's very consistent. And if you first get on it, some people might misread that as bland, and it's not the longer you live with it. But different to the other bikes that I was considering. And this isn't necessarily saying that you would want a garage of all 3 of them. It's just that it gives you different options to play with. And for me, the second one that really lives with me is the Triumph Scrambler 1200. And I can never remember which way around it is. The XE, I believe, the one with the taller suspension, yeah?
Yeah, I wish there was a way to remember it, but XE is tall. XC is the slightly more road-biased, lower-slung version. Yeah. But the XE is awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, I love, obviously, you get everything you want with probably what you're craving, a classic-looking or retro-looking bike, and it looks like an old-school Bonneville. And then you also get it is not far off the ability off-road of the likes of my Africa Twin. So if you really actually do want to go and take something off-road and do some scrambling, it has the chops to do that as well, which I really like. That engine's characterful as well. Loads of fun. It's not one that I got bored of. And it's got loads of tech spec on offer, actually, for an old-looking bike.
Big time, yeah. GoPro integration being probably like the one that you would think of as like, what's the most far removed feature of this bike from how it looks? Then the ability to set a GoPro running from the switchgear is pretty techy, I'd say.
Agreed, yeah. If it's got that, then they really have thrown everything else at it as well, tech-wise.
Yeah, for sure. And then number 3?
Can you guess what the last one is?
Yes.
It comes from Italy, and it's a MOTO GUZZI V7. And I have owned one in the past. I've ridden them lots, and it is always one that I get pulled to. And the reason I like that, if you've got your high-performing retro in the likes of the R9T, you've got your off-road retro that really can go off-road and has ground clearance in the Scrambler. And then you've got the V7. Now, I like cruisers. I've always liked cruisers, but the only one that I've owned close to it really was the V9. And obviously we've ridden loads of other cruisers as well. They're never one that I really realistically consider owning for myself because I know that it doesn't have everything that I want. For me, a V7 is close enough to a cruiser feel whilst still having the ability, you know, ground clearance, lean angle that you can get out of the likes of a Bonneville. And again, I've had some, you know, fast enough rides on it if you're with the right kind of pack.
Yeah.
And I just love it.
Yeah, it is good. I'll give you that. I only wind you up about it because I knew you had one, and because it's easy to say it's like a bit of a tractor, isn't it? But actually, it is a really, really good bike. Yeah. Good shouts, all of them, mate. All bikes that I've thoroughly enjoyed. I didn't pick anything the same though. I think the ones that kind of still stand out for me, I mean, firstly, for that old school feel and also the accessibility of the price is the Interceptor 650. I just think it's got the old school looks. It's got the air-cooled engine or air and oil-cooled. It has that versatility of a sort of upright standard retro bike. And then just over £6,000, there's very few bikes in terms of value for money that can get close to it. Yeah. I just think the weird thing is as well, I've shot a video with it, but then I never had enough footage to upload anything meaningful. But I'm such a big fan of it. I need to get hold of one. It feels like not very timely to publish a review of it, but I want to revisit it at some point just because people comment quite often on other retro bikes saying, yeah, but what about the Interceptor? And it's like, yeah,
I'll put it out then.
I've ridden it. I've enjoyed it. I just didn't manage to get the video together. So yeah, I will revisit that one. But it's a cracking bike and it's
a good choice. And you would be very hard pushed to beat that value for money.
Yeah. I mean, base level, if you want a retro bike that feels relatively big, it's not the fastest, but for easygoing, chilled out riding, it's fine.
What I like about that as well is that, you know, if you're the type that wants a retro bike as, say, a second bike or something, it's less of a commitment, isn't it? So if you've got your bike, say you've got something like an adventure bike and you want that little weekend toy to just pop out to the cafe and have a fun ride on, because it still does ride well.
Totally.
Great choice.
Yeah, big time. Then I was thinking, what's the opposite end of the spectrum? Like, I want something fast and fun and highly spec'd. Things like the Speed Twin, but maybe I thought a bit obvious. I mean, probably if I had to just buy one, I'd be thinking about a Triumph Speed Twin. Seems like versatile and really good at everything and beautiful to look at. But if I was more thinking like something quicker than that, and still banging value for money, it has to be the XSR 900, the most recent one. So I rode that last year on the launch in Tuscany, which admittedly was like enhanced the experience a little bit, has to be said. But I still think, having ridden the MT-09 before, same bike, just with a body kit, and they've stretched it a bit. It's got a longer swing arm, so it's a bit more stable, sits a bit lower at the back. I just think it's phenomenal in terms of everything that it does. Great handling, great suspension and brakes, great. The engine, the CP3, whether it's in the MT, the Trace of this bike, one of the best engines on the market. Yeah. I can't think of anything that I don't like about it, apart from maybe the looks are what could be described as Marmite.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, and I think so. I've ridden I rode the original version, so the older version, the older look of the bike, and that is definitely not seeing the new one in the flesh, but just from actually, you know, pin-ups of them. It's the older look that I am more drawn to. I think that the new shape doesn't quite do it for me.
Got it.
But you know, the mechanics are still there. It's still the same, and it is a phenomenal bike, and similar to the R9T, where I'm like, I don't think I'd be faster on the likes of a street triple. It's my sort of benchmark for something that I've owned and, you know, have experience of. And the same is definitely true. I mean, it is a 3-cylinder again, and it's, you know, in terms of capacity, it sits between, say, a street triple and a speed triple even. So love a 3-cylinder, high performing, good choice.
Thanks, mate. And then I also went down the same route as you, which was like trying to think of something off-roady. You know, I did think about the 1200 Scrambler, but then also, well, I think my final choice would be the Desert Sled, because the other things like cover off the more road focused sides. So if I want to choose something a bit off-roady, maybe I'll go for something a bit lighter than the Triumph, a bit simpler, a bit more closer to sort of enduro vibe. It feels a bit more maneuverable. And
yeah, that's embarrassing. I didn't remember the Desert Sled. Otherwise, you're quite right. If you're looking for like a retro scrambler that actually, you know, that you would want to take off road, it's a bit lighter, probably a bit more manageable.
The only other potential candidate here is the Fantic Caballero. You know,
okay,
it's like plasticky. They make They make primarily enduro bikes and motocross bikes, I think, but they do a retro as well. Really nice. And then
I've always been curious of that.
It's good, but previously it was a 125, a 250, and a 500, and they're all singles. But for next year, they've bought the rights to the MT-07 engine, and they're making like a 700. It's kind of looks a bit chubby compared to the 500. It doesn't look quite.
The 500 looks kind of chubby, like comparatively to other bikes and stuff. I always think, you know, like the in my mind, it draws me to the Rebel in that it's like quite a cartoony, chunky looking bike. And that's it's a good choice though. We went out on the Royal Enfield day, and one of the instructors on the day was riding one of them, weren't they? Or said that they do often. Yeah, no, it was in the lockup when we went and did the Royal Enfield.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And they actually do take that off road. So again, it can do it mildly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Desert Sled would be my pick just for kind of all round desirability. Looks cool.
It's a very good choice.
The only thing that's potential spanner in the works is the fact that since they updated all the scramblers, I actually don't see it on the website anymore. So be a big surprise if they did discontinue it. So they've made some changes to the icon and the other bikes, like lighter frame, and they've added TFT dash, and they've added riding modes and phone integration. So maybe it's just that they're going to release the Desert Sled with all of those kind of updates, but wanted to space out the announcements because it's got such a big following anyway, the Desert Sled, that maybe it deserves some promotion in its own right. But
I would say my guess would be that they're holding their cards closer to their chest to create, like you say, maybe a bit more interest in it rather than just going, here are all of our new bikes in one go. Hopefully that's the case because it sells well. It's a great bike. I'd be surprised if they didn't decide to continue that.
Or maybe it's one of those bikes though that everyone says they love, but actually maybe their sales volumes aren't that good. Who knows? Maybe. Yeah.